And there's a deeper challenge. Many of the people most affected by what we talk about here will never come to this conference. That's the central tension of this forum. Davos is an elite gathering trying to shape a world that belongs to everyone. That is why this year's theme is the spirit of dialogue, because dialogue is the only way a room like this can earn the legitimacy to shape ideas for people who aren't in the room. And besides, the world needs some more good faith conversations with people who don't typically talk to one another. I think that most people, at least intellectually, know that finding a common ground with a stranger is a hopeful thing. It restores your faith in humanity a bit. But how often does it actually happen? Hopefully a little more happens now. But how often can we make it happen? Because dialogue, especially the listening half of dialogue, is what the World Economic Forum needs in going forward. We need more of it. For 56 years, the World Economic Forum has been synonymous with Davos. And that's likely to remain true for a long while. But you should also see the World Economic Forum start doing something new, showing up and listening in places where the modern world is actually being built. Davos, yes, but also places like Detroit and Dublin, or cities like Jakarta or Buenos Aires. We need the mountain to visit everyone, to be a part of everyone's life. So in fact, that's why I agreed to take on this role after Klaus Schwab, whose more than a half-century of work, together with an extraordinary, dedicated group of men and women at the World Economic Forum, made this gathering possible. There was an opportunity to make this forum more transparent, and I thought this was the surest way to rebuild trust. When people can see in the room about the debates, about the participation, and about the conversations, and maybe a lot more understanding. That approach may fail in other gatherings. In this one, it's going to work. Because for all the caricatures of this forum, the people who come here, the people I know, aren't here to congratulate themselves, aren't here to pat themselves on the back. They're not here to protect their own comforts. The people I know are here for something bigger than themselves, bigger than their organizations that they represent. I believe in economic progress should be shared. All of us at the forum believe that economic success should be shared. And we believe institutions like the World Economic Forum still matters in making things happen. So let's remember this during the week about real conversations. Let us all commit to listen, to learn, to understand. And if we could all do that, we will all be better for that. Thank you. And now my co-chair.
Thank you, Larry, for that very powerful message at the opening of our annual meeting. Now it is my pleasure to introduce our other co-chair, Andrea Hoffmann, and I would also like to use this opportunity to thank both of the co-chairs for their leadership during the last three-quarters of a year. Andrea Hoffmann, you know Andrea, many of you, he's our co-chair, but also the vice chair of Roche. So, Andrea, the floor is yours.
Your Majesties, Excellencies, distinguished forum partners, ladies and gentlemen, it is now also my turn to welcome you here in this meeting placed under the spirit of dialogue. At a time when science confirms that humanity has already transgressed 7 of the 9 planetary boundaries, as highlighted in the planetary health check in September 25 from the Potsdam Institute, the challenge before us is no longer one of just awareness, but of action, making the need for collective responsibility, decisive leadership, and meaningful dialogue more urgent than ever, as Larry just underlined. For over half a century, leaders from across the globe have regularly gathered here in Davos, in Switzerland, to confront the defining challenges of our time. This was done as a community bound by shared responsibility for our collective future. This tradition, born from conviction that the great questions facing humanity demand dialogue against their differences, has never been more vital than it is today. At a moment when the world confronts profound questions about growth, about innovation, about technological transformation, and about our planet's future. At a moment where we need spaces where diverse voices can be heard, where we need just and safe places where diverse voices can be heard. At a moment where complexity must be examined from multiple perspectives so that we gain the insights we desperately need. This is why the World Economic Forum exists. Since 56 years, it is the international organization for public-private cooperation. A space where government, businesses, and civil society come together and generate the insights that emerge when different worldviews actively illuminate one another. And this matters because in a world that feels increasingly divided, progress depends on our ability to listen and engage across differences. Could I ask my wife to give me the third page, which I left there? As you can see, you can be prepared, but also a bit clumsy in delivery. Sorry about that. This is why our gathering... This is why our gathering takes place here, in Switzerland, a nation whose tradition and commitment to dialogue reflects the very spirit we seek to embody. Davos has over so many years almost become, as I said before, a synonym for the World Economic Forum. It is therefore a particular pleasure for me to welcome Monsieur Guy Parmelin, President of the Swiss Confederation, as the opening speaker here in Davos. Bonjour, Monsieur le Président de la Confédération. Je vais vous demander de venir sur scène. Merci beaucoup. Merci d'avoir accepté de partager vos réflexions avec nous.
Thank you for accepting our invitation.
Has been a member of the Swiss Federal Council for over 20 years. He initially led the Federal Department of Defense, Civil Protection and Sport, and since 2019 has headed the Federal Department of Economic Affairs, Education and Research. Mr. President, when you were inaugurated as President by the Swiss Parliament last December, you chose to speak about dialogue. At a time of uncertainty and tension, you reminded Parliament that Switzerland's diversity is not something that sustains itself automatically. It only becomes a strength if we truly listen to one another, if we resist the temptation to dismiss different views simply because they come from another political camp. You emphasized that societies do not move forward through value judgment on others, but through respect for those who think differently. Diverging opinions, you argued, are not an obstacle, but a driver of progress and a source of genuine innovation. This understanding of dialogue, rooted in listening, proximity, respect, and a shared sense of responsibility and humanity, is one that deeply resonates here in Davos. It also reflects the value of the World Economic Forum. Talk and listen to each other, embrace other options, and act in a collective interest. The spirit of dialogue. Before inviting the President to speak to us, allow me also to express our deepest gratitude to the Swiss government, to the Swiss Parliament, to the Canton of Graubünden, to the Swiss Army, and to the police. A special thank you goes to the community of Davos and Klosters, for their decades of exceptional hospitality and partnership. And above all, our thanks go to the people of these communities whose openness and commitment truly embodies the spirit of Davos and the spirit of Switzerland. Your Majesties, Excellency, distinguished foreign partners, ladies and gentlemen, it is a particular pleasure to invite now le Président de la Confédération Suisse, Guy Parmelin, to address us. Thank you very much, Guy. The floor is yours.
Je vais parler français. Monsieur Hoffmann,
I shall speak French. Mr. Hoffman,
Monsieur Bender,
Mr. Fink, Mr. Bender, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen.
ma qualité de président de la Confédération
My
suisse,
quality as President of the Swiss Confederation, I'm particularly happy to welcome so many heads of state
Forum économique
to this annual meeting of the World Economic Forum.
particulier,
This is particularly meaningful in a year which started with a tragedy for our nation, and Switzerland would like to
les pays
thank
concernés,
all of the nations concerned for the support and solidarity
drame de Crans-Montana.
they expressed during the disaster in Crans-Montana. It is extremely impressive to see how energies can be mobilized by such a disaster, how it can strengthen
Et cette unité
international cohesiveness and unity. This must go beyond, of course, the particular or dramatic events. It must pervade the relationships between our countries, because it is only together that we can find solid and lasting solutions to the major challenges of our time. 2025 offered up a number of challenges: geopolitical, economic, and digital upheavals on a global scale. They can be seen everywhere. They permeate our daily lives and even extend to the World Economic Forum, for which the past year was not a walk in the park.
ces nombreux hôtes de marque
This edition, with its many distinguished guests, attests to the importance of resilience and dialogue in the bedrock of our institutions
faire face.
and their ability to cope. 2026
Laisse déjà
has barely started,
bouleversements à venir.
yet there are indications of upheavals to come and potential flashpoints.
L'Ukraine, de Gaza et du
Ukraine, Gaza, Sudan,
Venezuela et de
and now Venezuela and Iran, to name but a few.
politique économique,
In terms of economic policy,
c'est
protectionism is on the rise all over the world.
question
In addition,
concernant
there are many unresolved issues about the role and control of artificial intelligence that remain unanswered. This should come as no surprise. For humans, standing still is not an option. Or to quote philosopher Henri Bergson, to exist is to change. This year will be marked by technological advances,
à la fois
as well as economic and security concerns. The rapid rise of AI
à transformer
is set to deeply transform the fabric of our societies.
qu'elle impose
The changes it brings will be visible at every turn and in every area of human life, the economy, government, in our day-to-day lives.
travailler
They're changing the way we work, communicate,
et à ce titre
and make decisions.
à la fois
As such, they present both risks and opportunities.
véhiculant
Digital transformation will bring the dangers of cybercrime, disinformation, but also exciting prospects, particularly in the field of healthcare. Technology is never inherently good or bad. It is what we make it. And to make it a positive ally, its users must have a deep sense of responsibility.
affaire de sud du
Change is not just a matter of speed. As Economic Affairs Minister, trained in the School of Life, I'm well placed to explain that lasting success depends on early and forward planning.
dans de nombreux autres
This is a rule that applies to many other sectors, where investments do not generate immediate returns. I'm thinking of research, which also falls under my remit as minister.
elle est nécessaire en tout
Long-term thinking is necessary in any situation. It is particularly necessary in times of upheaval.
progrès
It can help us to drive progress while remaining true to our fundamental values, without forgetting their meaning or their role. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Switzerland draws its strength from the consistency that helps to ensure political stability. Consistency is not a source of stagnation. On the contrary, it is the foundation of progress. Our country is fortunate enough to have an excellent education and research system with a capacity for innovation that recognized far beyond its borders. With its open, export-oriented economy, Switzerland is an integral part of the global economy. The Federal Council is deeply committed to ensuring that our country can continue to participate successfully in the vitality of that economy. One of our current priorities is to stabilize and expand relationships with our most loyal and significant partners. Switzerland also wishes to continue to diversify its international relations, particularly in the areas of trade and science. Even in the current climate, which is prone to protectionism, we believe in the success of free trade and wish to continue expanding our networks of agreement. To achieve this, we must be able to conduct negotiations on an equal footing, yielding good results for the benefit of all parties. Agreements of this kind, which are mutually beneficial, don't happen by chance. We have the ability to build them patiently, one step at a time. Personal contacts and a willingness to engage in dialogue are essential, and we have both. The World Economic Forum has always contributed to this dialogue, and I would like to thank it for offering us, in Switzerland, once again this year, an extraordinary international platform for exchange. Switzerland is in tune with this. As a neutral nation, it is able and willing to assume its responsibilities in favor of a rules-based international order, international law, human rights, and free trade. These values have always defined us. This year, Switzerland is taking on a particularly demanding task in chairing the OSCE, Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. However, our country's diplomatic strength also lies in its recognized practice of good offices, for which International Geneva provides a stage commensurate with the challenge at hand. Switzerland is always available to play a part. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, our different positions offer us unparalleled prospects on the evolution of our worlds and the dangers that threaten it. They also provide us with the necessary overview and connections to address these changes with the appropriate means and in a concerted manner. Society, science, economics, and politics must interact in a spirit of partnership. Otherwise, problems can only be addressed in a partial and imperfect manner. Let me add that it also takes courage to take on a task of this magnitude with the ambition of seeing it through to completion. The courage to innovate, to remain true to one's values, to ask for assistance or advice when necessary. The courage to make a long-term commitment, as wine growers do when faced with the slow and relentless pace of nature. We shall see what AI has to offer. We will certainly still be amazed, perhaps dazzled. But what it will never be able to do is to bring hearts together or attract helping hands, as we saw at the start of this year in the canton of Valais. Solidarity and humanity are not part of digital vocabulary. I see this as a good omen for the future. Many thanks for your attention.
Thank you so much, Mr. President, and also on behalf of the World Economic Forum, we send our warmest thoughts and condolences to the people affected by the tragic fire in Crown Montana. Ladies and gentlemen, it is really my great honor to welcome one of the most influential and respected leaders on the global stage today. President Ursula von der Leyen, a stateswoman whose leadership has helped define and shape Europe's direction in an era of historic uncertainty. Madam President, you have guided the European Union with clarity, resolve, and strong sense of purpose through some of the most demanding moments in history. Under your leadership, the European Commission has advanced a bold agenda for strengthening Europe's competitiveness with upholding its core values. As President of the European Commission, you have championed a Europe that is competitive yet fair, open yet resilient. On the global stage, you have been a clear and consistent voice for multilateral cooperation, support for Ukraine, and a rules-based international order. At a time when leadership is tested not only by crisis, but by choices made for the future, your voice offers both direction and reassurance. Please join me in welcoming President von der Leyen. Madam President, the floor is yours.
President Brende, dear Borge, thank you very much for the warm welcome. Your Majesties, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, indeed, it is now 56 years since the first meeting here in Davos. And the idea of the founder, Klaus Schwab, was to create a platform to discuss the issues and the ideas of the day. Of course, the world has transformed completely since 1971. But the original idea of Davos has remained, as we just have heard in the speeches. So I was delighted that you have gone back to your roots with this year's theme, a spirit of dialogue. Because this spirit is all the more important in a world that is more fractured and more fractious than ever. 1971 was the year of the so-called Nixon shock and the decision to delink the US dollar from gold. In an instant, the foundations of the Bretton Woods system and the entire global economic order set up after the war effectively collapsed. But it also had two major effects. It inadvertently created the conditions for what would become a truly global order, and it provided a sharp lesson for Europe and on the need to strengthen its economic and political power. It was a warning to reduce our dependencies, in this case, on a foreign currency. The world may be very different today, without any question, but I believe the lesson is very much the same. That geopolitical shocks can and must serve as an opportunity for Europe. And in my view, the seismic change we are going through today is an opportunity, in fact, a necessity, to build a new form of European independence. And this need is neither new nor a reaction to recent events. It has been a structural imperative for far longer. So when I used this term, European independence, around a year ago, I was surprised at the skeptical reactions. But less than 1 year on, there's now a real consensus around this. The sheer speed and almost unthinkable scale of the change have driven this, but the underlying imperative is still the same. The good news is we acted immediately, whether on energy or raw materials, defense or digital, we're moving fast. But the truth is also that we will only be able to capitalize on this opportunity if we recognize that this change is permanent. Of course, nostalgia is part of our human story, but nostalgia will not bring back the old order. And playing for time and hoping for things to revert soon will not fix the structural dependencies we have. So my point is, if this change is permanent, then Europe must change permanently too. It is time to seize this opportunity and build a new independent Europe. And ladies and gentlemen, this new Europe is already emerging. On Saturday, I was in Asunción, in Paraguay, to sign the EU-Mercosur trade agreement. It was a breakthrough after 25 years of negotiations. And with it, the European Union and Latin America have created the largest free trade zone in the world, a market worth over 20% of global GDP, 31 countries with over 700 million consumers, aligned with the Paris Agreement. So this agreement sends a powerful message to the world that we are choosing fair trade over tariffs, partnership over isolation, sustainability over exploitation, and that we are serious about de-risking our economies and diversifying our supply chains. And that will not stop in Latin America. Last year, we reached new agreements with Mexico, Indonesia, and Switzerland, our host country. We're working on a new free trade agreement with Australia. We are also advancing with the Philippines, Thailand, Malaysia, the United Arab Emirates, and more. And right after Davos, the next weekend, I will travel to India. There's still work to do, but we are on the cusp of a historic trade agreement. Indeed, some call it the mother of all deals. One that would create a market of 2 billion people, accounting for almost a quarter of global GDP. And crucially, that would provide a first-mover advantage for Europe with one of the world's fastest growing and most dynamic continents. Europe wants to do business with the growth centers of today and the economic powerhouses of this century, from Latin America to the Indo-Pacific and far beyond. Europe will always choose the world, and the world is ready to choose Europe. And ladies and gentlemen, this reality also reflects the fact that Europe has all the assets it needs to attract investment. The savings, the skills, the innovation with our AI factories and gigafactories and the applications that are necessary, AI first. What we need now is to mobilize collectively these assets to their full potential and to focus on the essential. So focal point number one is to create a conducive and predictable regulatory environment. We live in an age where capital and data can cross Europe in a second, and business must be able to move just as freely. But as things stand, Too many companies have to look abroad to grow and scale up, partly because they face the new set of rules every time they expand into a new member state. So while on paper, the market is of 450 million Europeans open to them, it is far more complicated in reality. And that acts as a handbrake on the growth and profit potential of companies. So this is why we need a new approach. We will soon put forward our 28th regime. The ultimate aim is to create a new, truly European company structure. We call it EU Inc., with a single and simple set of rules that will apply seamlessly over our union, so that businesses can operate across member states much more easily. Our entrepreneurs, the innovative companies, will be able to register a company in any member state within 48 hours, fully online. They will enjoy the same capital regime all across the European Union. And ultimately, we need a system where the companies can do business and raise financing seamlessly across Europe, just as easily as in uniform markets like the United States or China. If we get this right, and if we move fast enough, this will not only help EU companies grow, but it will attract investment from across the world. Which brings me to the second focus, investment and capital. We are now building the Savings and Investment Union. We need a large-scale, deep and liquid capital market that attracts a wide range of investors. And this will allow business to find the funding they need, including equity, at lower costs here in Europe. We have made proposals on market integration and supervision to ensure our financial market is more integrated. This covers trading, post-trading, and asset management, as well as driving innovation and making our supervisory framework more efficient. This will help ensure that capital flows where it is needed, to scale-ups, to SMEs, to innovation, to industry. And the third priority is to build an interconnected and affordable energy market, a true energy union. Energy is a choke point for both companies and households. And just look at the dispersion of prices across European electricity hubs. Europe needs an energy blueprint that pulls together all the parts. This is our Affordable Energy Action Plan. We are, for example, massively investing in our energy security and independence with interconnectors and grids. This is for homegrown energies that we are trying to promote as much as possible, the nuclear and the renewables, to bring down prices and cut dependencies, to put an end to price volatility, manipulation, and supply shocks. But now we have to speed up this transition, because homegrown, reliable, resilient, and cheaper energy will drive our economic growth and deliver for Europeans and secure our independence. Ladies and gentlemen, whether on trade or business, capital or energy, Europe needs an urgency mindset. Our starting point is good. We are home to global champions in fields ranging from wind power to next-generation batteries, from aerospace to the industrial machines that are essential to build the chips and advanced weapons. Our companies are taking up AI at the same pace as their US peers. Europe is in the race for the key technologies of tomorrow. But as global competition gets ruthless, we must show real ambition, especially in those sectors vital for our independence. Take defense, for example. We have done more on defense in the last year than in decades before. We have started a surge in defense spending up to 800 billion euros till 2030. Member states are stepping up their investment at record level, and this has helped to triple the market value of European defense industry companies since January 2022. We now have 3 leading European defense tech startups that have reached unicorn valuation. They are working on AI-powered software and systems for battlefield intelligence, or on advanced dual-use and surveillance drones. So they are also driving innovation and investment in Europe's defense tech industrial base. All of this would have been unthinkable even a few years ago. This now only shows how economy and national security are more linked than ever, but also what we can do when Europeans have the will to match the ambition. So, ladies and gentlemen, this need for ambition is most important when it comes to the security of our continent. In just over a month, we will mark the 4th anniversary of Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine. 4 years on, Russia shows no sign of abating, no sign of remorse, no sign of seeking peace. On the contrary, Russia is intensifying its attacks, killing civilians every day as we speak. Just last week, its bombing of Ukraine's energy infrastructure left millions facing darkness, cold, and water shortages. This must end. We all want peace for Ukraine. We recognize President Trump's role in pushing the peace process forward, and we will work very closely with the United States. And we all agree that, therefore, Ukraine must be in a position of strength to go to the negotiation table. And this is why we Europeans have decided to provide Ukraine with a loan of 90 billion euros for 2026 and 2027. With this support, we make sure that Ukraine can bolster its defense on the battlefield, strengthen its defense capabilities for a peace agreement, and keep basic services running. Above all, it reaffirms Europe's unwavering commitment to the security, the defense, and the European future of Ukraine. And in parallel, we decided to permanently immobilize the Russian assets, and that we reserve the right to make use of them. This should serve as a stark reminder to Russia and as a message to the world. Europe will always stand with Ukraine until there is a just and lasting peace. Ladies and gentlemen, I've spoken a lot today about European independence, on partnerships, on prosperity and security. So I would like to conclude with Greenland, an issue which cuts to the heart of all 3 of these imperatives. When it comes to the security of the Arctic region, Europe is fully committed, and we share the objectives of the United States in this regard. For instance, our EU member, Finland, one of the newest NATO members, is selling its first icebreakers to the United States. And this shows that we have the capability right here in the ice, so to speak. It shows that our northern NATO members have Arctic-ready forces right now. And above all, that Arctic security can only be achieved together. And this is why the proposed additional tariffs are a mistake, especially between long-standing allies. The European Union and the United States have agreed to a trade deal last July. And in politics, as in business, a deal is a deal. And when friends shake hands, it must mean something. Ladies and gentlemen, we consider the people of the United States not just our allies, but our friends. And plunging us into a downward spiral would only aid the very adversaries we are both so committed to keeping out of the strategic landscape. So our response will be unflinching, united, and proportional. But beyond this, we have to be strategic about how we approach this issue. And this is why we are working on a package to support Arctic security. First principle, full solidarity with Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark. The sovereignty and integrity of their territory is non-negotiable. Second, we're working on a massive European investment surge in Greenland. We will work with Greenland and Denmark hand in hand to see how we can further support the local economy and infrastructure. Third, we will work with the United States and all partners on wider Arctic security. This is clearly in our shared interest, and we will step up our investment. In particular, I believe we should use our defense spending surge on a European icebreaker capability and other equipment vital to the Arctic security. And fourth, in the same spirit, we need to work with all our regional partners to strengthen our common security. And this is why we will look at how to strengthen our security partnerships with partners such as the UK, Canada, Norway, Iceland, and others. Finally, I believe Europe needs to adjust to a new security architecture and realities that we are now facing. And this is why Europe is preparing its own security strategy, which we plan to publish later this year. And as part of this, we are upgrading our Arctic strategy too. And at the heart of this will be the fundamental principle: it is for sovereign people to decide their own future. Ladies and gentlemen, when I started preparing for this year's address, security in the High North was not the main theme. But in many ways, it feeds into the wider point I started with today. That Europe must speed up its push for independence, from security to economy, from defense to democracy, having the dialogue with our friends and partners, also if necessary with adversaries. The point is that the world has changed permanently and we need to change with it. And therefore, thank you and long live Europe.
Madam President, there is not much to add, but a big thank you. Long live Europe, more defense than in decades. The mother of all deals might be around defense than in decades. The mother of all deals might be around the corner with India, the largest trade deal in the world is between the EU and Mercosur. It is a very powerful and historic speech from Madam President. Please be seated, because now we'll walk Madam President out, and then the Chinese Vice Premier He will join us. So a big applause to President Ursula von der Leyen.
We are now going to continue the proceeding of this morning with the presence of the Vice Prime Minister of China, the Right Honorable Lifeng, and we are going to give him the floor to participate. But first, we'll have to understand that there's a couple of minutes delay because, as you have probably heard, the traffic is quite intense in town. Sorry about that. And now I'm very happy to invite the Prime Minister to come here to give his remarks.
首先向各位抱歉，因为刚才交通拥堵，迟到了几分钟啊，向大家致以歉意。尊敬的赫夫曼主席，尊敬的芬克主席，尊敬的布伦德总裁，尊敬的各位嘉宾、女士们、先生们、朋友们，大家上午好！很高兴来到美丽的达沃斯，出席世界经济论坛年会。今年年会围绕对话的精神这一主题，赋予各方相互倾听、加强交流、增进互信，正逢其时。2017年，面对逆全球化的思潮，习近平主席在这里深刻作答“世界怎么了？我们怎么办”的问题，指出让世界经济的大海退回到一个一个孤立的小湖泊、小河流是不可能的，也是不符合历史潮流的。习近平主席的重要讲话拨云见日，被论坛方面誉为世界带来了阳光。2021年，习近平主席提出，让多边主义的火炬照亮人类前行之路。2022年，面对疫情之后重建的宏大课题，习近平主席强调，在全球性危机的惊涛骇浪里，各国不是乘坐在190多条小船上，而是乘坐在一条命运已共的大船上。9年来，中国一直认真贯彻落实习近平主席重要讲话精神，践行人类命运共同体的理念，坚定支持多边主义和自由贸易。今天我们重温习近平主席的这些讲话，深感依然适用于当今世界，给人们带来深刻的启示。当前世界百年变局正在加速演进，单边主义、保护主义抬头，叠加地区冲突和地缘政治的影响，全球经济贸易秩序发生新的变化。尤其是去年以来，关税战、贸易战给世界经济带来重大冲击，多边主义和自由贸易面临严峻挑战。面对世界之变、时代之变、格局之变，习近平主席相继提出全球发展倡议、全球安全倡议、全球文明倡议，去年又提出全球治理倡议，凝聚起要团结不要分裂，要合作不要对抗的共识和力量，为解决世界面临的共同问题提供了中国的方案。结合当前的形势，我愿意分享几点看法。第一，坚定支持自由贸易，携手推动普惠包容的经济全球化。经济全球化是各国分工合作、优势互补、互利共赢的历史大势。中国和很多国家都受益于此，共同实现了快速发展。反之，关税战、贸易战没有赢家，不仅提高全球的生产和贸易成本，而且导致全球经济碎片化，破坏全球资源的配置。世界贸易组织研究表明，按照最惠国待遇条款进行的全球贸易份额，已经由去年年初的80%降至72%。国际货币基金组织测算，经济碎片化可能导致全球 GDP 损失约7%，这不符合各国的利益。尽管经济全球化并非尽善尽美，也可能会伴随产生一些问题，但不能因此就对经济全球化全盘否定，重新退回到自我封闭的孤岛。正确之道，应当也只能是通过对话，共同找到解决问题的思路，引领好经济全球化的走向。中国积极倡导普惠包容的经济全球化，不行筑墙之举，勤做铺路之人。 我们将坚定支持贸易投资自由化便利化，继续向世界分享发展机遇，携手共创繁荣发展的美好未来，努力争取让发展红利惠及每一个国家、每一个群体。第二，坚定维护多边主义，推动完善更加公正合理的国际经贸秩序。当前，多边贸易体制面临多年未有的严峻挑战，一些国家的单边做法和贸易协议明显违反世贸组织基本原则和规则，严重冲击国际经贸秩序。正如习近平主席指出，越是困难时刻，越要秉持和平共处的初心，坚定合作共赢的信心。多边主义是维护国际秩序稳定、促进人类发展进步的人间正道。规则面前，应当人人平等。极少数国家不应当有基于实力的特权。世界不能重新回弱强势的丛林法则，各国都有权维护自身的正当权益。中国加入世贸组织以来，一直严格遵守世贸规则，认真履行承诺，并且主动作出更大贡献。去年郑重宣布，在世贸组织当前和未来谈判中，不寻求新的特殊和差别待遇。中国将继续坚定维护以世贸组织为核心、以规则为基础的多边贸易体制，坚定支持世贸组织、国际货币基金组织等多边机构改革，提升多边贸易体制的权威性、有效性、包容性，提高全球南方国家和发展中国家的代表性。中国乐见各国达成互利互惠的贸易协议，但相关协议应当符合世贸组织的规则，不能损害第三方利益。第三，坚持合作共赢，致力共同做大合作的蛋糕，合力破解发展的难题。当前世界经济增长动能不足，国际货币基金组织预计2026年全球经济增速为3.1%，低于疫情之前3.7%的历史平均水平。更让人担忧的是，发展公平问题日益突出，可持续发展事业面临严峻挑战。联合国发布报告显示，联合国2030年可持续发展目标中，预计超过2/3无法按期实现。发展的道路上，不应当是你输我赢的零和博弈，而应当是美美与共的共鸣协奏。要共同把发展的蛋糕做大，比相互争夺蛋糕更重要；共同解决合作的问题，比相互指责更有实效。中国一贯重视以自身发展带动贸易伙伴共同繁荣，致力于做大全球经贸蛋糕。我们从不刻意追求贸易顺差，不仅愿意做世界工厂，更愿意做世界市场。但是很多时候是中国想买，对方不愿意卖，贸易受到泛安全化的影响。同时也要看到，当前服务业占全球 GDP 2/3以上，中国长期以来都是服务贸易大额逆差，但是并未因此认为自己就吃亏了。所以中国愿意发挥超大规模市场优势，更大力度的扩大进口，加强产业合作共赢，让各国更好地分享中国机遇。第四，坚持相互尊重、平等协商，善于用对话妥善管控分歧，解决问题。过去1年，中美经贸关系经历了一些波折。在两国元首韩国釜山会晤 和4次通话共识的引领下，中美两国经贸团队先后举行了5轮经贸磋商，按照相互尊重、和平共处、合作共赢的原则，妥善处理两国经贸领域的一些突出问题，保持了经贸关系总体的稳定。事实再次证明，中美和则两利，斗则俱伤，双方应该也能够相互成就，共同繁荣。这有利于两国，也有利于世界。中美经贸磋商情况也充分表明，只要相互之间能够平等协商、相向而行，办法总比问题多。坦诚而言，世界各国社会制度不同，发展制度有别，历史文化各异，发展和交流交往过程中，难免会有一些分歧和摩擦，有时其实只是误解。关键是要秉持平等、尊重、互惠的态度，坚持以对话增互信，以磋商解纷争，不能从对抗对立中找答案，而要在交流协商中谋出路，探索双赢多赢之道。中国是各国的贸易伙伴，而不是对手。中国的发展是对世界经济发展的机遇，而不是威胁。对于国际经贸合作中出现的一些分歧和误解，中国倡导通过平等协商增进互信，弥合分歧，解决问题。女士们、先生们、朋友们，过去5年，中国经济运行稳中有进，改革开放纵深推进，消费市场持续扩大，新质生产力稳步发展，绿色低碳转型步伐加快，经济实现了5.4%左右的平均增速。目前经济总量已经达到140万亿元人民币，对全球经济增长的贡献力稳定在30%左右。过去5年来，中国累计进口货物和服务超过15万亿美元，对外投资累计为东道国纳税3000多亿美元，带动了大量就业，促进了当地经济的发展。中国经济基础稳、规模大、优势多、韧性强、潜能足，发展取得的成绩主要是靠改革、靠开放、靠创新，而不是所谓的政府补贴。中国经济发展虽然也面临一些老问题、新挑战，但总体上是发展中的问题，是转型中的问题，我们正在努力解决，完全有信心，也有能力应对各种风险挑战。去年10月，中国共产党召开了20届四中全会，审议通过了第15个5年规划建议，为中国今后5年的经济社会发展做出了顶层设计和战略擘画。未来5年，中国将更加深入贯彻习近平主席提出的创新、协调、绿色、开放、共享的新发展理念，加快构建以国内大循环为主体、国内国际双循环相互促进的新发展格局，充分激发14亿多人口的超大规模市场的优势，不断推动高质量发展取得新的成效，将以更完善的市场规则、更健全的制度保障，为各国提供更多的中国机遇。中国将积极地扩大内需，愿与全球共享超大规模市场机遇。目前，中国已经是全球第2大消费市场，其中汽车、手机、家电等各个细分领域已经成为全球最大的市场。但是，人均消费支出与发达经济体相比，仍然还有差距。中国现有的中等收入群体将进一步增长，对高品质生活的多样化需求将不断增加，隐藏着巨大的消费潜力。 中国把内需主导列为今年经济工作的首要任务，正在抓紧制定实施城乡居民征收计划，大力提振消费，加快在制造大国的基础上成为消费大国。中国将持续推动投资移物和投资移人紧密结合，积极扩大教育、医疗、养老等领域的投资和消费，不断地激发消费的新增量。中国将继续办好进口博览会等活动，进一步扩大进口，让全球更多优质商品进入中国市场。欢迎各国企业抓住中国扩大内需的机遇，提供更多更好的商品和服务，以中国消费市场为依托，在激烈的国际竞争中赢得先机。中国将坚定扩大开放，愿意与全球共享高水平的开放机遇。改革开放是中国的基本国策，中国开放的大门只会越开越大。中国将积极扩大自主开放，主动对接国际高标准经贸规则，以服务业为重点，扩大市场准入和开放领域，更大力度地吸引和利用外资。中国将持续打造市场化、法治化、国际化的一流营商环境，对内外资企业一视同仁，把企业的需求清单变成政府的服务清单。外资企业在中国经营遇到的问题可以随时反映，我们将积极研究解决。中国将深化国际产业分工的协作，坚定维护全球产业链、供应链的安全稳定，培育共赢共享的全球大市场。欢迎各国企业继续积极投资中国，共享中国的发展机遇，也希望各国政府为中资企业提供公平、非歧视、透明、可预期的投资环境。中国将加快科技创新，愿意与全球共享创新驱动发展的机遇。当前新一轮科技革命和产业变革正在加速推进，带来新的历史机遇。中国经济高质量发展离不开创新驱动。中国式现代化也必须靠科技现代化做支撑。目前中国的研发人员总量、国际专利申请量等位居世界第一，应用场景十分的丰富，创新的氛围良好。人工智能正在赋能千行百业，中国将继续推动科技创新和产业创新深度融合，加强知识产权保护和运用，激发各类创新主体的活力。科技进步离不开国际合作，科技创新既有机遇，也潜藏着风险。中国愿意同世界各国一道，以开放合作为促进科技创新和世界经济发展赋能，为应对人工智能治理等方面的全球性挑战贡献智慧。中国的创新发展不仅服务自身，也造福世界。欢迎各国企业与中国深化创新合作，共享创新驱动发展的机遇。中国将坚持绿色发展，愿意与全球共享绿色低碳转型机遇。去年9月，习近平主席在联合国气候变化峰会上郑重宣布2035年国家自主贡献，首次提出绝对量的减排目标，体现了中国的坚定决心和最大努力。中国已经建成全球最大的可再生能源体系，最完整的新能源产业链，将全面地实施碳排放总量和强度双控制度，力争2030年之前二氧化碳排放达到峰值，努力争取2060年之前实现碳中和。中国将与各方一道，全面有效地落实联合国气候变化框架公约及其巴黎协定，维护气候多边进程， 积极推动全球绿色低碳发展。中国将致力于与各方建设更加紧密的绿色发展伙伴关系，努力弥补绿色产能的缺口，确保优质绿色产品在全球自由流通。欢迎各国企业抓住绿色低碳转型的机遇，加强与中国在绿色基建、绿色能源、绿色矿产、绿色金融等领域的合作，携手打造一个绿色繁荣的未来。女士们、先生们、朋友们，达沃斯的智慧在于对话，世界的前途系于合作。正如习近平主席所说：“冲出迷雾，走向光明，最强大的力量是同心合力，最有效的方法是和衷共济。”让我们秉持人类命运共同体的理念，发扬对话的精神，深化开放合作，共同推动世界经济这艘巨轮在广阔蓝海上乘风破浪，行稳致远，携手共建美好未来，预祝本次年会圆满成功。谢谢大家。
So, Vice Premier He, I really appreciated your words. The wisdom of Davos is dialogue. You underlined also strongly the importance of a win-win approach. And also, you underlined the importance of China increasing demand in its domestic economy. When China was first in Davos in beginning of the 80s, China was 2% of the global GDP. Today, China is close to 20% of the global GDP. So it is a very important the path also then China is following. On behalf of everyone here, I would like to thank you. Thank you also for your leadership, and I think many of us will also have the pleasure of joining you in the summer and Summer Davos in Dalian this year. So thank you very much, Mr. Vice Premier.